Hey everyone, thank you for joining today's session with GMAT Club. And I'm really excited to present on this topic today because I think it's really relevant to what's going on in the application process right now. So, did you know that one of the top reasons that applicants don't get into their dream MBA programs is vague or unrealistic post-MBA career goals? The career goals essay or short answer question in the application is not just a formality, it's a make or break of your application. But what makes a post MBA goal powerful in the eyes of the admissions committee? And how can you craft a goal that feels authentic and strategic? And that's what we're diving into today. So by the end of this session, you're going to see 10 real and successful career goal examples so you can see exactly what works. And whether you're aiming for consulting or tech or venture capital or social impact or none of the above, you'll walk away understanding what works and hopefully with inspiration to clarify your own career vision. So let's get into it. Number one is a clear understanding of why post-MBA goals matter. Because I think understanding the why behind this requirement from literally every single admissions committee will help inspire you and give you motivation in pursuing the answers that are right for you. We're also going to give you clear criteria that comprise solid and winning post-MBA goals, because without that context, it's impossible to know whether or not your goals are on the right footing or not. And then, as the title of this webinar indicates, we're going to leave you with 10 real-life successful examples of post-MBA career goals, because I believe that examples are the best way to really understand and firm up theoretical concepts in your mind. And then lastly, we'll leave you with an invitation to connect with our team if career goal development is something that you're still unsure of or struggling with in the application process and you're looking for help from a world-class MBA admissions consultant. So, why do post-MBA career goals matter? And the way I like to tackle this question is really to focus on you, because you know that the admissions committee cares about it and you have a sense for why it matters to them as a criteria for evaluating applications. But what's in it for you? Why should you bother to really put so much time and effort into this exercise? And the number one reason is school selection, right? It is nearly impossible to nail down the list of schools that are right for you without knowing exactly which industry or functional area you're focusing on as part of your recruiting efforts once you're in school. And so understanding your career goals first is going to be a huge influencer ultimately in selecting schools and deciding which programs to apply to. Next is the time and financial investment, right? Applying to business school and going to business school is a tremendous financial undertaking. And if you don't know how you're defining success, you don't know what the goal looks like at the end of your 2 years and beyond, it's really difficult to justify that investment and to make the case for the MBA. Next is time allocation in school, right? Business school has been often compared to drinking out of a fire hose, right? And by that, I mean that at any given time, there are approximately 22 things you could be doing and spending your time doing as a student. And so without a clear North Star and a clear sense of direction around what your priorities are and what industries and functional areas you want to focus on, it'll be really hard to prioritize your time and your coursework appropriately. And then lastly, business school really doesn't leave you much time at all to soul search. And I'm not saying that business school won't be a time for self-discovery, because it will be. There are going to be opportunities, jobs, companies, things that you could do professionally that you didn't even know existed. But if you're not grounded in a core sense of what you're motivated by, what you want to achieve, and what your interests are, it's going to be really difficult to hit the ground running as a first-year student and jump into internship recruiting, which literally begins 2 to 3 weeks after you begin your program. So having that sense of direction up front is going to ensure that you can hit the ground running and make the most of the recruiting runway as soon as it begins. All right, so you know why post-MBA goals matter. And I just want to quickly take a pause here in the content and share a little bit more about my team and why we could be helpful to you if you're struggling with career goal development in your application process, whether you're unsure of your goals or you're not sure if they're specific or detailed enough, or you have no idea even what you want to do and you want a thought partner to help you hone in on what that right story is for you. We are the folks for that job. We're a team of active 25 consultants, and career goal development is probably the number one or number two reason that clients choose to work with us, because they want that thought partnership and they want that guidance. We've been doing this for nearly a decade. We've worked with over 1,100 applicants, and our clients are routinely accepted to programs like Harvard and Stanford and Wharton, and career goals are a huge piece of that exercise. But really, we are in the business of helping folks get into the top MBA programs, but we aren't really just about getting you accepted, right? We do believe in our mission to help ambitious professionals like you clarify your goals and tell your story and truly use the MBA as a launch pad into the career and life that you truly want. And so if this sounds interesting to you, you can reach my team in a few different ways, including the email address on the slide here. And you can also visit our website for more information and to request a free consultation, which we offer to anyone who's interested in partnering with us on their applications. So let's get back into it. What are the 4 key elements of winning career goals? And I know you're itching to get to those examples, but I think it's really important to ground yourself first in context and to understand what are the key criteria of winning career goals so that you have a frame to evaluate the examples I'm about to share with you. So number 1 is short-term and long-term. Successful post-MBA career goals are typically split into 2 components. Your short-term goals, which are what you want to do immediately after business school, and your long-term goals, which is where you see yourself maybe in 10 years or 15 years. And that is the larger career vision that you have for yourself as you continue to progress in your career post-MBA. Most people have already thought about their short-term goals, or at least given it some thought and understand what the possibilities are right out of business school. But don't forget that long-term matters just as much, right? It's not just about what is the job and the function and the companies that you're targeting, although all those things matter. It really is about having a longer vision for your career and really understanding what is driving you in these efforts and steps you're going to be taking post-MBA. So short-term and long-term are essential components of post-MBA goals, but you also want those 2 to be connected together. And by that, I mean that your short-term goal should be a clear stepping stone towards your long-term goal and should help the reader, the admissions committee in this case, understand how step 1 is going to lead you to step 2 and step 3, etc. Next is that winning post-MBA career goals toe the line between ambitious and realistic, right? Your short-term post-MBA career goals should be possible. And this is especially important for your short-term goal, but they should also be ambitious, right? Especially when you're thinking about your long-term vision. You want to think and dream big and think about what's possible. And so what would be some red flags in terms of possibility, right? What would be something that the admissions committee might take pause at in evaluating your short-term goal in particular? And this is something that we've heard from admissions committees several times, is this concept of industry, function, and I'm going to add one more here, geography. Right? And ideally, you're not looking to pivot all 3 as part of your post-MBA goal, because that will likely be perceived as a very, very difficult and unlikely achievement. And so trying to hone in on 1, maybe 2 of those 3 criteria is going to maximize your chances of positioning your goals as being realistic and achievable. Something else to keep in mind, particularly when it comes to your short-term goals, is to make sure you're demonstrating awareness of the typical career pathways, how your industries of choice recruit, for example. I'm going to pick on private equity here for a minute. If you want to break into private equity post-MBA, if you do your homework, you're going to understand that it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to break into private equity immediately after business school without some sort of finance and investing background. And so you want to keep that in mind as you tell your story and as you map out your steps. And then another thing to also keep in mind is that you want to aim for target post-MBA level roles, right? Saying that you want to become the divisional manager of XYZ company immediately after business school is probably not likely. In some industries like consulting and investment banking, for example, hire for very specific roles out of the MBA. So again, do your research and make sure that you are grounded and aware of what those realities are and that you're positioning your goals accordingly. And when it comes to your long-term goals and really demonstrating that ambition, make sure that that ambition is big enough that it requires or makes a very strong case for the MBA, right? And that it really demonstrates your drive to achieve big things in the future, right? If this doesn't feel a little bit uncomfortable and you don't feel a little bit sheepish saying that I want to run X or solve XYZ problem, maybe you haven't dreamed big enough. And so use this opportunity to give yourself permission to add some ambition to your post-MBA vision and really get your goal story aligned with an exciting and inspiring career path. Similarly, your post-MBA goals should toe the line between specific and visionary, right? And specificity should be balanced with vision for several reasons. Your career goals should be specific because the AdCom wants to see that you've given them thought, right? And like we outlined earlier in the slides that I shared a few minutes ago, having specific goals is going to only be additive to you and your experience in terms of school selection and in terms of how you navigate your MBA experience. And so you want to have that specificity. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be flexible. And that's where the vision comes in, right? If you are anchored in a problem you want to solve or a specific impact that you want to have or a career that sits at the intersection of two different things, that is an okay starting point, particularly when it comes to your long-term goals, because there are then different pathways that you can take to getting there. And so making sure that you are not so specific and so rigid in your goals that an admissions committee may be concerned that you will not be successful or you might be disappointed if you're not able to hone in on those few specific things that you have on your list. Specific goals must also have a why behind them. And that's where the vision comes in, right? The vision explains the why of what you want to accomplish, and then the specificity really recaps the how. And then lastly here, I'll reiterate this again, vague goals are a huge red flag. You want to be specific in what you want to do, and you want it to be easily understandable to an audience who's just reading a couple of sentences in an essay or an application short answer and just gets it like that. And lastly, the connection to your past. And this goes hand in hand with realistic and credibility and vision, right? Your post-MBA goals should in some way, shape, or form connect to your past experience. It can be professional experience, it can be personal background or experience, it can be something you're involved in through an extracurricular. But there needs to be some sort of evidence in your past that your goals are truly something that you are driven to do, that you're not just writing a story because you think it sounds good or somebody told you that they got in because they wrote about that, right? You want to give your story credible why, and the proof points are in your past experience. Now, what if you want to do something in a new industry that you don't have any experience with? That's okay. Focus on the transferable skills, right? If you want to pivot from finance, for example, into industry, speak about your analytical skills and your ability to tell stories. And so that is the way that you can think about the transferable skills in a career switching narrative. And then, of course, you want to also make the case for the MBA, right? This is critical in any career goals narrative. You want to present the need for the MBA enhancing and accelerating and enabling those post-MBA goals. And so altogether, these are the 4 essential criteria that we utilize to evaluate and guide our clients in developing their post-MBA goals. So with that context in mind, I now want to dive into the 10 examples. And with these examples, I went to great lengths to really explore a whole wide variety of industries and functions and more typical and more unique post-MBA goals, because I really want to show you the gamut of what is possible and what has worked in the past. Now, remember, correlation is not causation, right? And so that means that all of the career goals I've shared with you, or I'm going to share with you in this presentation today, these are from real life client applications. But that doesn't mean that just because they wrote about that in their application, that if you follow that blueprint, you will get in as well, right? Authenticity is key, but these examples will hopefully inspire you and really help drive home those 4 concepts or 4 criteria that I just laid out. So number 1, careers at the intersection of consulting and healthcare. And I'm going to read through each goal and then sort of give my commentary and feedback on why I think it is so strong. So each goal is going to be split into short-term and long-term. So short-term, post-MBA, I plan to work in healthcare consulting at a firm like Deloitte or PwC in their health transformation division. Consulting will allow me to quickly and efficiently explore diverse business models and strategies, honing my expertise in addressing industry challenges such as tech integration, financial accessibility, and operational efficiency. And then my long-term dream role is to become a chief strategy officer at a national healthcare organization, leading initiatives that bring transformative technologies like AI and personalized medicine into mainstream care. So, what do I like so much about these goals, right? And you'll see that they've checked all 4 of the boxes that we just laid out earlier in the presentation. Of course, divided between short-term and long-term, but also, sorry, my something is covering up the slide here, but I believe it's focusing on being realistic versus ambitious, right? This client's post-MBA goal to work in consulting is realistic. That is something that, of course, consulting firms hire out of MBA programs. This client happened to work in data analysis in a hospital system prior to business school. And so again, that experience made it realistic that a consulting firm would be interested in their experience and in their transferable skills. But it's also ambitious, right? That long-term goal of becoming a chief strategy officer, that is a big, ambitious goal, right? They had big aspirations for the impact that they could have. And more than that, the vision they have for the role to really bring transformative technologies like AI and personalized medicine. And to be fair, there was a longer explanation of this goal in their essay that I didn't have space to elaborate on here. But their vision was specific and really laid out the problem they wanted to solve and the impact they wanted to have, the change they wanted to drive. And so the specificity here is spot on, realistic, but that vision and ambition is very much present. And of course, the connection to the past was also there, given this applicant's prior work experience. All right. So example number 2, this one sits at the intersection of luxury fashion and entrepreneurship. And so we're going to start in this case with the long-term goal followed by the short-term goal. And this is something that I want to sort of double click on for just a minute, because these are interchangeable. Your story does not have to anchor on short-term first, long-term next. Often, and in many cases, starting with long-term, where you can really anchor your reader into your vision and your big picture idea and the problem you want to solve, is helpful to first start there and then backtrack into the short-term goal being a stepping stone or key step to helping you get there. So I just want to flag that in a specific career goal essays where they ask you to detail your short-term and long-term goals, for example, feel free to take the liberty to flip those if it makes more sense for your story. So let's get into it. Long-term. Overall, my combined interests in marketing and branding, luxury and entrepreneurship have led to clarity in my future career goals. Ultimately, I'll launch and lead a fashion tech app designed to catalog luxury purchases and track their value over time as a portfolio. Surprisingly, Hermes Birkin bags retain their value better than gold and should be considered investments. This concept was inspired by my own cataloging of fashion investments combined with my tech industry experience. And to achieve this goal post MBA, I'll become a brand manager at a fashion house within a luxury conglomerate like LVMH or Kering, and I'll expand my hands-on luxury experience and network, building a deep understanding of this niche industry. I love this one. So we already touched on short-term and long-term, but this is a realistic post-MBA goal for this applicant. She worked in tech pre-MBA, but was really looking to bring that experience into the fashion and luxury space. And for the roles that she was targeting, they do recruit from the MBA programs that she was applying to. And so again, that realism and realistic nature of her goals was very strong in the short term, but also in the long term, right? It might have been a little riskier for her to talk about launching the fashion app right away out of business school when she didn't have professional luxury industry experience, nor did she have professional entrepreneurship experience. And so presenting the short-term goal as a stepping stone made that long-term goal feel that much more credible and really demonstrated the self-awareness that she had, that she needed to gain additional relevant experience before she was ready to become an entrepreneur. And so the specificity here was very clear. I mean, anyone who's reading these statements can understand exactly what she has in mind, exactly what her vision is. The strong reason why is very clear, right? Her idea for the startup stems from an experience that she's had and a problem that she's faced in her personal life and sees real commercial opportunity for it. And that connection to the past, again, is interwoven into both her short-term and long-term goals. All right, example number 3. So this one sits at the intersection of hospitality, travel, and social media. Post-MBA, my short-term career goal is to work in digital branding within the travel and hospitality industry, recognizing that online channels are now the optimal way to reach and scale audiences. To grow my network and industry knowledge, I'll target larger companies such as Airbnb or American Express Travel, starting in a manager or brand strategy role, then climbing in seniority to gain more ownership. In long term, after accumulating expertise at more established businesses, I'll become the chief brand officer at an earlier stage venture such as Prior, creating compelling narratives that promote and celebrate immersive travel experiences. As everything from dating to grocery store checkouts make the digital migration, my dream job is to build immersive travel brands that resonate with current and future generations of digital natives, influencing them to step beyond their online ecosystems and adventure into the real world. And in doing so, I hope to help them experience the same profound connection and wonder that I felt in my travels, ultimately inspiring them to spend more time offline and enjoying the richness of life that no screen can ever recreate. Wow. I mean, I'm in. Really, really strong story here. The vision and the ambition that she has to really recreate a new dynamic within travel, I mean, that is huge. And it was heartfelt. It was really, truly rooted in her own personal experiences. That's the connection to the past piece. And really demonstrates a confidence to go out and change a paradigm that is very much fact and reality for an entire generation of folks. And so A+ here on the vision and really on the ambition to change lives and change the world, to borrow the terminology from Stanford. Going back into realistic and specific. The short-term goals, again, are very realistic. These are roles that companies recruit for out of MBA programs. This will probably not be an on-campus recruiting type of experience, but given the schools that she was targeting, these companies that she listed here have specifically recruited. And she did really make sure that she was specific in naming the role and the type of function that she would want to work in at those companies to really understand exactly what she was targeting and aiming for as part of her recruiting process. The trajectory to her long-term goal to become a chief brand officer makes sense. And she also mentioned a specific company that is already doing something in the space that she's working in. So once again, that gives more credibility to her goals and makes them feel more realistic because she's already plugged into this space. She understands what's happening, who's doing what, and how she fits into it, and ultimately how she's going to take steps to gain experience in order to be prepared to have the impact that she wants to have. So again, really A+ on bringing heart and soul into the story, but also in aligning that with clear, specific steps that she plans on taking, and then aligning those into both a short-term and long-term career trajectory that's ultimately going to have a tremendous impact on the target audience and on the subset of clients that she'll be working with. All right, number 4, operations, consulting, and retail. So short term, I've seen how frontline employees can be a critical enabler of sustainable growth. And I'm excited to advance this solution in my career. Immediately post MBA, I'll return to consulting firm as a project leader in the consumer, retail, and operations practice areas. And here I will continue building an operational improvement blueprint through diverse client engagements while gaining early career people management experience. Long term, I aspire to rise to an executive level leadership position in operations at a large retail or e-commerce company such as Amazon or Kroger, where I'll implement people-first strategies at scale. I intend to become a leader who prioritizes employee-focused operational strategies aimed at optimizing workforce efficiency, improving employee satisfaction, and reducing burnout, all while enhancing customer satisfaction and driving profitability. I hope to build company cultures that influence industry-wide practices, proving that sustainable growth is achieved when all employees are empowered to thrive. And so this applicant was really driven by the vision that he wants to empower frontline employees, right? So in the example of Kroger, that means the folks that are working in the grocery store, that are stocking the shelves, that are checking people out at the cash register. For Amazon, that means the people that work in the warehouse. That even means the drivers that are delivering your packages to your door every day. He was really passionate about bringing all workers, right, all employee stakeholders back into the conversation and helping that drive operations decisions that truly ultimately impact them the most and bring them in as stakeholders to help improve operations and then ultimately create a better customer experience. And so back to our 4 criteria, of course, short-term and long-term are nicely laid out. The connection is clear, right? This applicant happened to be sponsored by his consulting firm. And so short-term, he plans to return back to that consulting firm and grow into a higher level of responsibility within a specific practice area that is going to give him more subject matter expertise, but then also build his people management experience, right? Because that's going to be critical to ultimately moving into an executive level position at one of these large companies where his consulting experience, his subject matter expertise, but more importantly, his leadership skills are really going to be the key and the ticket to his success. Specificity is very clear here. Again, very specific positions, very specific companies, very specific steps that he plans to take. Realism, yes, this applicant was sponsored by his company to go to business school, and so the possibility of returning is very certain. But even the longer term goal of moving to an executive level leadership position, I mean, that is a path that has been well trodden in the past in terms of moving from consulting to industry, and that experience lends itself really nicely to those C-suite level roles. The ambition is clear. The vision was clear. He was really focused on operational excellence, but through the lens of starting with the boots on the ground, frontline employees first and up. And that's a different perspective than what is often adopted and even often taught in MBA program classrooms. And so there's a clear vision here and a clear point of view that he brought to life really, really nicely. And then the connection to the past, again, was here. He brought in his past casework and really how those experiences and insights had guided his vision. Number 5, private equity in fashion. So once again, we're flipping back the long-term and short-term focus area to help improve the storytelling. So long term, I've observed a disconnect between surging private equity investment and actual brand performance. While PE investors seek to leverage the inherent equity of iconic brands, competing priorities between profitability and customer needs, coupled with a lack of operational and transformation expertise at portfolio companies, often leads to poor outcomes. And so I've recognized my long-term career opportunity to bridge the gap between equity investment and operational execution, transforming consumer brands into profitable, sustainable enterprises while preserving brand integrity and customer loyalty. And so, with that context, as a chief operating officer, I want to bridge the gap between equity investment and operational execution to drive successful brand transformations that integrate profitability, brand equity, and customer loyalty. Ultimately, I want to honor the trust that customers place in brands and be known for ensuring that fashion brands in particular have strong business performance and enduring customer relationships. And so short term, I'll seek an operational role within a portfolio company of a consumer-focused private equity firm, such as, I'm sorry, again, my slide is hidden here, but I believe it's L. Catterton, Sycamore Partners, or Nexus Capital Management. And so what I really like about this story is the detailed description of the problem that this applicant has identified. And what they're really saying here is basically once an iconic brand is acquired by private equity, there's a lot of dilution of the brand and ultimately deterioration of product quality, operational quality, customer experience, et cetera, because there isn't always the expertise needed to create transformations that remain true with that brand and that still align with what made them so special in the first place, right? Because when you're acquired by a private equity firm, oftentimes the first thing that happens is cost cutting. And maybe the target company was operating inefficiently, but ultimately cutting costs without really understanding what's at stake and what are some of the unintended consequences is a major problem. And this is something this applicant wanted to address and solve in their career. Excuse me. In terms of the breakout between short-term and long-term, this is very clear stepping stones. This was a realistic goal for this applicant, given what they wanted to achieve and given the program that they were targeting. This particular applicant was a management consultant going into the application process. And so these were observations that they made specifically throughout their work experience. And then the specificity is very, very clear and strong, right? You know exactly what they want to do, the role they want to target, both short-term and long-term, how one leads to the other. And ultimately the vision is very clear and inspiring, right? It's different from the status quo. It's recognizing a true problem. And ultimately they want to solve that problem through readying themselves first for that big role, and then ultimately becoming a chief operating officer who can help change that paradigm and make sure that private equity acquired brands remain true to what made them so special and ultimately don't compromise the customer experience and what made them so iconic in the first place. All right, example number 6, sports and DEI. So despite the success of the MBA's $77 billion deals, I continued to see limited equity and diversity in sports, just as I had observed at Nike. In media, an arena where heteronormative displays of strength dominate, more space must be given to female and LGBTQ+ athletes. As a member of the queer community who doesn't feel consistently represented in sports, I recognize that the way sports are portrayed has an immense impact on how individuals, especially children, perceive their place in it. So long-term, my goal is to become an executive leader for a professional sports league, focusing on media strategy and fan experience. I hope to grow accessibility and diversity in sports by unlocking resources for historically underrepresented audiences. And to get there, I plan post-MBA to return to consulting firm as a project leader and continue building expertise and relationships in media and entertainment. After honing the leadership skills I developed during my MBA, I will then pivot directly into sports to drive inspired impact. So like the applicant that was a few examples ago, this particular applicant was also sponsored by their consulting firm. Sorry, we work with a lot of consultants who was also sponsored. And so short term, their plan was to return back to their consulting firm, take advantage of the sponsorship opportunity, of course, but continue to grow their skill set as a stepping stone towards their long-term vision. This particular applicant had done a secondment, which is sort of a short-term internship at Nike. And so these were some of the insights and realizations that they had during that experience and brought them back to their firm, and ultimately was really the driver and the core inspiration behind their long-term career goals. And so going back to the criteria, short-term and long-term, clear delineation, realistic and specific. So both their short-term goals and their long-term goals felt realistic. Well, the sponsorship, of course, the program made their short-term goal very realistic, but also their longer-term goal really left enough of an opening to present a lot of different avenues, right? There are many professional sports leagues and many different executive leadership positions. And so for this applicant, it was less about needing to have a specific seat, and it was more about thinking about the impact that they could have. But still, the vision and the seat they want to have and the vantage point, if you will, that they want to have in having that impact was very clear. And so the specificity for me was very strong. And there was no doubt or shadow of doubt in anyone's mind when they were reading this goal statement about what they wanted to accomplish. But still also visionary, right? I mean, this is a big change this applicant is inspired to drive, and it's something that's rooted in their personal experience, right? So that connection to past is both personal and professional, but ultimately have a very clear vision for the future, and the impact is crystal clear, and something that an admissions committee audience can really get bought into and excited about buying into. All right, example number 7, sustainability and impact investing. So short term, growing up in India, I saw the difficulties faced by companies trying to prioritize sustainability over revenue growth. And while I've been blessed to pursue my academic and professional growth in the US, I dreamed of sowing seeds of climate and sustainability efforts back home, so their fruits can be reaped where they are needed most. Post MBA, I'll return to consulting firm as a project leader to broaden my expertise in reshaping organizational strategy towards incorporating sustainability. And then long term, I'll facilitate sustainability at a national scale in South Asia by redirecting concessional capital from highly developed countries as a leader of a catalytic climate fund. So once again, very clear delineation between short-term and long-term. The short-term goal is a clear stepping stone towards the ultimate long-term vision that this applicant had to return back to their home country and leverage the experience and the skills that they have from consulting in order to really drive change in an area that is of great need, but also something that they'll be well equipped to impact. Realistic, once again, returning to their prior employer is a very realistic short-term goal, but also long-term, given the experience and the network that this applicant will have with the MBA, combined with their experience in management consulting, it is very realistic that they will be able to achieve what they set out to do in the long term, right? If that long-term goal was the immediate post-MBA goal, it would be a different story. But again, the long-term goal really does have more flexibility in terms of envisioning multiple steps to getting there. But ultimately, there's no doubt in my mind that if this applicant sets their mind to this, it is something that could be achievable for them. The vision, right, and the ambition is very clear, right? This applicant envisions having a large-scale impact, not only within their country, but within an entire region. And they want to impact an area that has faced resistance in the past, right? That is huge. And so being able or having the ambition to shift a paradigm, they're going to face a lot of headwinds in that process. And they understand that, right? But again, that vision and that ambition is huge, and they're laying the groundwork now in order to accomplish that. And then again, that connection to the past is very clear, both from their personal background growing up in a country where they've witnessed these problems, And then, of course, also through their professional experience working in consulting. All right, example number 8, investment banking and finance. Post-MBA, I plan to join the investment banking division of a leading firm like JP Morgan, Evercore, or Moelis, where I can focus on M&A and capital markets transactions within the healthcare or technology sectors. Investment banking will give me the rigorous financial training, deal exposure, and strategic insight required to understand how companies create value, scale effectively, and navigate complex financial decisions. Long-term, I aspire to become the CFO of a mission-driven healthcare or health tech company that's working to expand access to quality care through innovation. In the CFO role, I don't just want to manage financials. I want to be a strategic partner to the CEO and help guide bold, responsible investments that improve patient outcomes, support underserved communities, and fuel sustainable growth. My vision is to bring financial discipline and purpose-driven leadership to an industry that touches everyone. And so in this case, the short-term and long-term delineation is very clear and really does a nice job of touching on how the progress from investment banking to ultimately CFO makes a lot of sense. It is a path that has certainly been walked before. And again, the possibility of getting an investment banking job post-MBA is very high because all of the banks that this applicant listed, of course, recruit typically on campus at the top MBA programs. And investment banks are a little more flexible than some other industries or firms in terms of hiring folks without any relevant prior experience. So if you demonstrate true aptitude and true commitment and excited for investment banking and corporate finance and the markets, this is something that can be achievable even for someone, like I said, that doesn't have experience from that sector previously. And then long-term, again, the path to CFO is something that has been walked before and is certainly realistic in the long term. Specificity. This client was very specific about what they aspire to do, right? They want to join an investment bank. And then long-term, they want to become the CFO of a particular type of company. But they didn't stop there, right? They didn't just define the job description of a CFO. This applicant has a very specific vision for what he wants to do as the CFO, the impact he wants to have, and how that differs from the status quo and just any old CFO, right? He really wants to push the needle and push the envelope in terms of enabling change and driving innovation and helping healthcare companies better serve patients. And he views doing so through the lens of financial management and financial stewardship as the most powerful way to drive those changes. And so that was his vision and his point of view. The connection to the past. So this particular applicant did not actually have investment banking experience previously. He actually had a military background. So the connection to the past was less strong here, but the healthcare focus was something that was rooted in his personal past and personal experience navigating a long-term injury. And so that story isn't described here, just in the interest of space, but he did a nice job of really inspiring the why behind his vision and ultimately having that lay out into clear stepping stones in his career path and vision. All right, example number 9. This one focuses on climate change and consulting. So short term, I plan to spend the rest of my career working in my area of passion. Immediately post-MBA, I will begin my pivot by working in climate change consulting. Target firms include BCG and Deloitte, as well as niche firms such as WSP, Resource Management, and SLR. I plan to start my pivot as a consultant to quickly gain experience that will develop my strategic thinking skills, build industry-specific knowledge, and provide broad exposure to multiple corporations and sustainability problems. And over time, I'll grow into a C-suite strategy role. I believe that through an internal strategy role, I can have the greatest impact by enabling attractive and sustainable solutions to consumers that ultimately save our planet. The impact I aim to have will not only be on the business I'm employed by, but on the entire planet, saving it for ours and the next generation. And so the short-term and long-term breakout here, again, very clear and very organic in terms of how the stepping stone of a short-term goal of working in consulting and then ultimately leading into a long-term goal of moving up into a strategy role, probably as chief strategy officer or something similar. So that progression made a lot of sense. It is realistic. It is something, those firms, those target firms that this client listed here are firms that all recruit out of pretty much all of the top MBA programs. But he took it one step further and also referenced specific organizations or initiatives within each firm that have the subject matter expertise that he's looking to gain and are doing work in the space where he wants to have an impact. He also mentioned smaller firms, which I really appreciate, right? It's easy to hone in on the big names, particularly if you're gunning for consulting, for example. It's all about MBB, right? But what about other firms that will also give you an equally strong experience and opportunity to gain that subject matter expertise, but also the breadth that comes with client work? And so I really like the breadth here that he presented in terms of different firms that would align with his vision. He's pivoting into consulting from a previous background. But again, consulting firms are open to recruiting MBA grads that don't have prior consulting experience. And so that is something that is realistic as part of his plan. But also the realism comes in understanding that he needs this consulting experience before he can move into ultimately an in-house strategy role. In terms of ambitious, this client was very passionate about climate and sustainability. He's very passionate about saving the planet, out of a lack of a better word. And so this was something that was driving all of his goals and the steps he plans to take. And in his role as a CSO, for example, or some other similar role, he really was focused on driving more sustainable practices and steering a company towards having a lower environmental footprint, but not only that, furthering the sustainability of the business for the long term. And then number 10 is a career goal that sits at the intersection of tech, AI, and marketing. And so short-term post-MBA, I plan to join a leading tech company like Google, Microsoft, or Meta as a product marketing manager within an AI-focused division. In this role, I'll bridge product development and customer needs, shaping go-to-market strategies and messaging for AI tools in areas like healthcare, education, and accessibility. This role will give me hands-on experience in translating complex technologies into impactful user-centric solutions. Long-term, my vision is to become a VP of product marketing or head of responsible innovation at a global tech company, where I can shape not only product direction, but also industry standards. I want to champion the development and adoption of AI that enhances human potential while preserving dignity and trust, especially for historically underserved communities. So this applicant was really focused on the ethical implications and practical implications, for that matter, of AI. And what that means for employees, what that means for customers, what that means for me and you. And so that was really at the core of their career goals narrative and the path that they laid out to help bring that to life. And so let's go back to the criteria. Again, short-term and long-term, very clearly laid out. The short-term makes the case for the long-term. In this applicant's case, they plan to remain in industry, maybe even within that same company, but move up into a more senior level role where they have a greater level of responsibility and be able to drive decisions with greater impact and greater scope. Very specific, right? You know exactly what they want to do short term and exactly what they want to do long term. So really strong on the specificity here, but also not so narrow that you wonder whether or not this client is going, or this applicant is going to consider it a failure if they don't land in that exact specific spot. The vision and the ambition is a big one, right? A VP of product, that's a pretty big role, but the impact they want to have and the really the focus on ethical AI is something that feels ambitious, it is visionary. And while there are many conversations happening around that space every day, what the future holds in terms of action and in terms of real impact still remains to be seen. And this is a conversation and certainly an arena that this applicant planned to play a meaningful role in. The connection to the past, again, this applicant had marketing background, and so they were pivoting sort of industries here, but bringing in their marketing lens into moving into this more tech and AI focused role. So A plus again on all of the different criteria, and something that's easy to get bought into, and also a reader can understand how an MBA is going to help enable them to accomplish these goals. And of course, these are roles that that these companies recruit out of top MBA programs for. All right, so there's your 10 examples. I hope you're feeling inspired. I hope you have had some aha or light bulb moments for your own career goal development process. I also hope this helped demystify it a little bit, right? I think sometimes it can feel really overwhelming to say, gosh, like I need to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. But really seeing these examples will hopefully help you bring this back down to earth and help you visualize already what this means for you. But if you're still feeling stuck, or you want a thought partner to help bounce ideas off of, or you're really focused on really building out this story and then applying it more fully into your essays, I invite you to schedule or request a consultation with a member of my team. We'll be happy to discuss your needs and see what the opportunity would be to work together if that's something that interests you. So with that said, I want to open it up for questions. I know we have about 8 minutes left. And the chat has been busy, although I have not been able to read it as closely as I would like. This question is asking, as an international applicant with 6 years of work experience in real estate, what goals for me are sort of acceptable? I honestly want to get into strategy consulting, so new function and industry. Great question. So I wouldn't look at this as acceptable, because then you're trying to fit, your path into someone else's narrative, right? You're not about to go spend $250,000 on an MBA just to go do something you don't really want to do. So my advice here is to kind of repivot the question and say, okay, if my goal is to get into strategy consulting, first of all, I would ask myself, why? Why is that the end goal? And then take a step back and say, okay, what are the stepping stones that I would need to take to get there? If it is going to be too much of a leap to hop both functions and industries, maybe is there a way to take a stepping stone where you only leap one of those and then ultimately make a lateral move or hire into your target management consulting firm, for example? So I would really think of it as stepping stones and sort of chunking it down into multiple steps, and having a little bit of patience, right, in terms of where you actually land where you are. But I think first I would recommend taking a step back and asking yourself, why strategy consulting? Why is that your goal? What do you want to accomplish? What's driving you towards that career path? And then use that to inform what other steps you could take there that will help you get there, and that you will still find meaning in, and will still help you get one step closer to that ultimate why and ultimate objective. So another question is, I work as a strategic alliances and partnerships manager in an IT company selling Google products for consumer goods companies. Wow, that is a mouthful. Is a pivot to sales role at a CPG brand a good short-term goal? Selling to consumer goods companies. I think so. You already understand these companies, right? And what they're looking for and what needs they have. And so pivoting into a sales role will help you better meet those needs, and help you better anticipate, what problems you might be able to solve for them, and ultimately help drive more revenue for the company. So yes, I absolutely think that sounds like a great opportunity and a way to leverage the experience you already have, but also give you a new skill set that you can then leverage to do a lot of different things, right? I mean, sales skills are essential in literally anything that you set out to do in your entire career. And so if you're able to master those early on and then use those as a pivot point or stepping stone to go into the next step, absolutely. I think that's a great plan. All right. Are there any other questions? Ooh, can we get the PowerPoint? Vishal, if you want to email the email address on the slide right now, I'll be happy to send that to you. All right, well, I guess that's it. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. You guys asked some great questions, and I really hope that these examples were helpful to you all. And look forward to hearing from some of you through email or through the website. Have a great day or great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.